What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm back with the 5th episode in the Bat Crazy Betty saga. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you haven't seen the previous 4 episodes, where have you been? Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any more in the future at the very least. But this is now a 5-part series about one in particular crazy unhinged mother-in-law. Now, before we get into the 2 stories in today's episode, I firstly want to read some of your guys' comments and just give my thoughts on them, because there are a few very interesting comments on the last episode which I want to just read out. Firstly, somebody said, "These stories make my skin crawl and are sick emoji. Why on earth did OP stick with this guy? As far as the story goes, she should have never been invited on this trip. The story is so infuriating. She should have got on that restraining order." I think the first point of this comment is very, very valid. Like, we've seen enough evidence now for OP to know, perhaps, that Dan isn't going to change. Like, yeah, they're obviously in love, they're married, but surely this is a deal breaker. You cannot have your mum in your life like this and allow it. I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to give any spoilers. This may change in upcoming episodes. Somebody else said, "The underreactions of the son are just as gag-worthy as his mother's actions. There seems to be no level of depravity this woman will go to." Now, I want to compare that comment to this next one. This is so freaking disturbing. I can't understand how she can stay in this marriage, how her parents could look at their son-in-law again. Then this is the important bit. He is so used to the abuse and sexualizing that he can't escape. I hope he gets the help he needs. This, I think, is interesting because we're sort of comparing 2 of your guys' thoughts, and obviously you can see the likes on those comments. They're both popular comments. One half saying that the son needs to do a lot more and how he's not reacting more is just ridiculous, which I agree with. And then the comment on screen saying that no, actually, he's just so used to it that he's not really aware of what's going on in a way. He just thinks it's normal. And actually, it's on OP to either force him to understand how weird this is or to just leave him. I'm not entirely sure what I think about this. It's hard, you know. Objectively, it's so obvious that this is abuse and what's going on is ridiculous, and it's crazy to me that Dan can't see that. But then again, I've not lived with his mum for all my life, so I don't know. Drop your thoughts in the comments before we get into today's first post. What are you thinking so far about this story? My mother-in-law thinks Valentine's Day is for her, and she broke into my house. In February of 2017, my husband and I were talking about spending a week in Vegas for Valentine's Day. We still weren't 21 yet, so we couldn't go to the casinos, but we loved the vibe, and there was still plenty for the not so legal age people to do. We decided to fly out Friday evening and come back Sunday morning. Thursday, I was in the middle of packing my bag when there was a loud banging on the door. My husband was at work that day and not due back for another 3 hours. I'd just gotten home from my morning shift and I wanted to get my bag packed, so I didn't worry about it later. I went to the door and I checked the peephole. It was Bat Crazy Betty. I really didn't want to deal with her, as I was still annoyed about what happened at Christmas. I tried to pretend I wasn't home, but the banging and her shouting only continued, so I threw open the door. Now, this is not verbatim, but this is just the gist of the conversation. "Hello, Betty. I'm a little busy right now. Dan's at work. What do you need?"
"Where is he? I know you're keeping him in there."
"What are you talking about? He's at work right now. If you want to talk to him, you'll have to come back when he's home. I'm busy right now."
"What are you doing?"
"Well, I'm packing."
"For what?"
"Dan and I are going to Vegas for the weekend. I'm just packing my bag today and we're flying out tomorrow."
"What do you mean? Dan said he was spending the weekend with me."
"I doubt that. Betty has a talent. She can lie without thinking about it. And what makes this talent even better is she actually believes it herself."
"Well, ask him. You'll see. Now, where is he? I know you're keeping him in there."
"Betty, I'm not keeping your son hostage in my house. We're married. I've already told you, he's at work." She tried to push past me, but I held my stance, blocking her from getting inside. This set her off, and she began screeching at me that she was going to call the cops because I was assaulting her. I told her to go ahead and that she wasn't welcome in my house. She stepped off the porch and took out her phone. I took that opportunity to close the door and I deadbolted it. Haha, female dog. I went into the kitchen and I could hear her screaming into the phone at whoever was unfortunate enough to answer it. Whoever it was, they deserved a raise for dealing with that woman. After a few minutes, she was back at my door, pounding on it. I guess the police told her she couldn't use them to break into someone else's house. They never showed up, by the way. I called Dan at work and told him his crazy mother is at our door, banging on it like a psycho. He sighed and hung up without saying anything. I then heard her phone ringing and she answered it. The switch was instantaneous. She went from screaming banshee to purring kitten in a matter of seconds. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but the progression of her mood going from joyful to sad was comical. She looked like she'd just gotten her feelings put into a chokehold. She ran off the porch, got into her car and sped out of there. I thought that was the end of it, but it didn't end there. Dan was annoyed when he got home. I asked him what was wrong and he blew up at me. He told me that when he called her, she said that I tried to invite her to Vegas with them and that I wanted them to enjoy Valentine's Day together without me. He said that I'd ruined the Valentine's Day surprise he'd been planning by inviting her. No, I didn't. I told him that wasn't true and that she made all of that up. I told him what she said about him agreeing to spend the weekend with her instead of me, her belief that I'm essentially holding him hostage in our house, like I keep him chained up in the basement or something, and the threat of calling the cops because I stopped her from breaking into our house. He got even more annoyed and called her. When confronted, she started wailing. I could hear her through the phone, she was that loud. Dan tried to tell her off, but her wailing only got louder. He hung up and apologized to me. We spent the evening ignoring her calls. We went to Vegas the next day and enjoyed the weekend. When we got back, we noticed the front door was open. In a panic, my husband ran in to check on his computer. He's an avid gamer and he shelled out big bucks for his system. He had a PS3, an Xbox 360, even old vintage systems like the Super Nintendo and a Sega. He's quite the collector and he's expanded it since then. Thankfully, we lived in a decent neighborhood and nothing was taken, of his anyway. We called the police and they walked us around the house, checking on everything to see what was taken. Upon checking in our bedroom, my pendulum was missing. My drawers had been rifled through. My side of the closet, most of my clothes were thrown on the floor. In my side table drawer, I'm keeping this PG, my rocket was missing. Okay. I knew only one person could be responsible, so I told them it had to have been Betty. They said, unless there was proof, they couldn't do much. I could only imagine what Betty would want with a used rocket. I gagged to think of the possibilities. That is disgusting. Dan called her. She flat out denied it and she was never arrested for it. She did go on a timeout because of it, but of course, Dan let her off the hook by suggesting it could have been someone else. I confronted him with the fact that only my stuff had been taken, not his. He did agree it seemed suspicious, but he didn't want to believe his mother would do such a thing. Days later, when Dan was visiting her, she started asking him questions about our sex life, questions a parent should not be asking their children about. He got uncomfortable and asked to change the subject. She let it go after that. Yeah, anyways, until next time, lovelies. Now, I've got to be honest, guys, it's getting to the stage now where I can't quite understand what Dan's doing. I know I read those comments out at the start and there was some differing opinion, but what is actually happening here? Surely it's got to the stage where you're not believing your mum anymore and you're believing your wife. But how is he still getting angry at OP when his mum is just obviously feeding him complete and utter bull, and that is the most obvious thing ever. She's been doing it for years now, yet he's still believing her. I do agree, as I said in the intro, with the comment that said that he has been being abused by his mum, probably for his life, right? And that he's not solely to blame. But come on, at some point, this guy's got to understand. He's got to realise what is going on and not just believe every single word his mum says, getting annoyed at his wife and then forcing you, OP, to have to explain everything when it's so blatantly obvious anyway. When's that going to happen? I don't know. Hopefully soon. Anyway, crazy start to this one. Let's get into the second post of this episode, which unbelievably, although to be honest, quite believably, gets even crazier. Okay, now moving on to the second story of this one. Hey lovelies, I'm back quicker than I thought. I was thinking back on all of the situations with Betty, and there are two here that I'd like to share. The first happened soon after the incident in my last post, and the other a few months later. March 2017. Dan told me about this as I wasn't home at the time, I was at work. A few weeks after the whole Valentine's Day incident, Dan was at home and Betty showed up again. She was pounding on the door, screaming at it, demanding to be let in. Dan went to answer, and she barged in and demanded to know where he was being kept. Mum, what are you talking about? Tell Mummy, Dan. Where does she keep you? I know she's keeping you in here and you can't leave. Do you need help escaping from that witch? Mum, you're not making any sense. No, you're not answering your phone, and when I tried calling her, she didn't answer. She's at work. She took an extra shift. I didn't know you called. My phone's on charge in the bedroom. Is she abusing you, baby? I can help you if you let me. No. So why won't she let you see me? She doesn't let me do anything. She doesn't control me, and she's not abusive. Dan told me he'd had enough by this point, asked her to leave, and sat back down on the couch to resume playing COD. What happened next had me physically gagging as he was telling about it. She bounded over to him like a prancing deer and sat in his lap and giggled. His mic was on and his whole team could hear as she pulled his head against her breasts and called him her good boy. The act had surprised him so much that he sprang from the couch, throwing her down to the floor. His team was laughing hysterically as he was yelling at her and chasing her out of the house, swinging the Xbox controller like a madman. To this day, what few of his gaming buddies from those days that remained, they still poke fun at him over it. Anyways, that was story 1. On to story number 2 per the title. She tried to kick me out of my own freaking house. June 2017, so a couple of months later. Dan was still in med school at this point and suffered a torn ACL in his knee. Wow, I am sorry to hear that. One of the worst injuries you can possibly get, within reason of course, but very bad. He'd been going to the gym regularly to stay in shape and live a healthy lifestyle, but the rigorous training caught up to him. When I got the call, I hauled butt to the hospital, still in my work clothes. I was given the entire rundown of what I'd need to do to aid him at home, maintain his appointments, administer his meds if needed, massage techniques to promote healing, etc. Dan was given 6 months to a year to fully recover from his injury, and it left him in a deep depression. He decided to give up med school. This was unpopular with a lot of his relatives, but it sent Betty into a tailspin. Guys, she freaked, and I mean freaked. Imagine that meme of the woman who screamed, "No!" when Donald Trump was elected the first time. It was just like that. "How could you do this? You're ruining your future," Betty said. "I can do something else. I don't want to become a doctor. You wanted that for me," Dan replied. "Did OP put you up to this? It's all her fault." I swear, this woman never misses a chance to demonize me. I went to hide out in the bathroom because my IBS was flaring up being near her. That was a fun 4 hours. Not. Dan was put on a limited schedule to make healing easier on him. He only had to go in twice a week and sit behind a desk in the dealership workshop. It kept his job, and I was taking on more shifts to offset our income. It left me physically exhausted, but it was only temporary until he could resume his regular schedule. Him getting healthy was what mattered. Betty had decided that me being away from home to work and keep a roof over our heads was considered spousal abuse and neglect, and she believed that I had forced Dan to drop out of med school. After I'd gotten home from work a few weeks into his recovery, I was shocked to see a moving van parked in my driveway. Betty was trying to move her stuff into my house. I had to park on the street as the van was taking up the entire drive. I went in to find Betty screaming at Dan, who was sitting on the couch looking defeated like he wanted to disappear. I asked what was going on and why Betty was in my frickin' house. "I'm not going to let you ruin my baby boy's future. I'm moving in and you're leaving." "Excuse me?" "That's right. I have the eviction notice right here." Betty handed me a piece of paper that had the word eviction clearly printed on a simple piece of printer paper. There was no letterhead or formal notice. It was simply her words printed on paper that said I had to leave immediately or the police would be called to escort me out of her and Dan's home. Imagine if that was how evictions work, by the way. I'd be going straight to central London, finding the nicest flat I could, and walking in there with some A4 and saying, "Listen, I'm sorry guys, you got to read the paper. You're done." I looked at Dan, who was on the verge of tears by this point. Torn ACL or not, he should have had the frickin' balls to stand up to her. I was exhausted and just wanted to take a shower and get some sleep as I had work the next day, but I was forced to deal with this situation. I looked at Betty, who was looking smug. I looked at Dan, who wouldn't make eye contact with me. You ever just decide to let someone hang themselves? Yeah, I called her bluff. I looked back at her and I smiled. She genuinely seemed unnerved by this, especially when I told her to call the police. She took out her phone and called them. The lies she spewed had me reeling. She said I was abusive, controlling, and I'd purposefully injured him to make him quit med school, that I was illegally in her house and I was refusing to leave. I made it a point to grab a beer out of the fridge, walk past her into my living room and sit down in a chair. I put my feet on the coffee table, she hates this, and I crack open that beer and take a sip. I took the TV remote and began flipping through the channels, just to be petty. When the police arrived, I said to Betty that if she was going to move in, she needs to make herself useful and open the door. I had a long day and I wanted to put my feet up. Yeah, I was being extra female doggy. I don't care. She let the police in and guided them into the living room and pointed at me. That's her. She's refusing to leave my house. Mom, are you aware you're currently trespassing into this woman's home? The police said. Well, I don't know how I can do that when her home is on the other side of town. This isn't her home. It's mine and my husband's. Wait, I'm confused. This isn't your house? No, it is. Dan owns it and wants me to move in to take care of him. Dan, tell them I live here. Dan didn't answer. Betty looked annoyed, and I laughed. You need to leave, she said. So, wait, the policeman said. Who owns this house? You or him? Officer, my husband and I are currently renting this house from a landlord. I can give you his number to call. Betty doesn't live here. She is the one trespassing. Well, that isn't true. Dan owns this house. He told me. Officer, make her leave now. The officer ignores her and takes the phone number for my landlord and calls it. After confirming that it was, of course, mine and Dan's home, he came back. Okay, so I spoke with your landlord and confirmed that Miss OP and Mr. Dan are the current tenants and you are not on the lease. Unless they say you can stay, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Betty looked at me, then at Dan. He looked away from her. You better tell them, Dan. Mum, please leave. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Betty, I add. Right, that's all I needed. Okay, Miss Betty, it's time to go. She just went berserk. When the officer took her by the arm, she shoved him in the chest as she tried to walk out. The officer grabbed her and told her she was being arrested for assault, and she began shrieking that he was trying to R-word her. She was screaming hysterically as he put her on the floor and put her in cuffs. Dan and I watched as another officer stepped inside to assist, and she was carried out. She was kicking and spitting at the cops as she screamed bloody murder. She got charged with resisting arrest and an assault on an officer. She only spent a night in jail and got let out on bail after seeing the judge. She cancelled the moving van and they had to haul her stuff back to her house. She ended up going no contact with us until Thanksgiving, which, again, I wasn't invited to. A few quiet, peaceful months. Okay, there we go. That is it for episode 5 of this one. Another crazy couple of stories going on in this, I don't even know what you call it at this point. Like, saga doesn't even feel like enough of a word. This is, I don't know, like, it's almost like a fever dream. I can't quite believe what I'm reading. But what I will say is this to you guys, okay? Make sure you're subscribed to my channel because tomorrow there's a slightly different post that's coming up next in this series of posts. I don't really want to spoil it, but given that you've watched all of this, I'll give you a little indication. It's not in line, let me just say this, with all the chronology that we've seen so far. It's a post from like now, involving OP and her husband and Reddit in particular looking at the comments that people have left on these stories so far. So it's one to look out for. Things start to get a little bit more real and in the present day, which is interesting. So yes, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on as well so you don't miss that when it goes live tomorrow evening or tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I don't care. I love you all equally. But yeah, that is going to do it for this one. If you haven't yet seen the rest of the episodes in this series, start here, episode 1. For those of you asking me as well, will this be made into one long episode? Of course it will. You know me by now. That's what I do. Don't worry. When it's all said and done, it will be uploaded as just one piece of content. But subscribe, turn noties on, and I'll catch you tomorrow.